Welcome to my soon-to-be nursery. As you can see, not a lot has been done in this space, aside from removing the horrible vertical blinds and taking out the sliding doors and shelf within the closet area. But there's a particular reason for that. I always teach my students as well as my clients to not jump into a project right away, start purchasing things, removing items, demolishing, really anything within the project until we first understand what it is that we're trying to do with the space. And that means planning. There are two main first steps I took when planning out my nursery. The first is the dreaded cost question. I really started to put some thought into how much this was all going to cost and what my comfort level was and what I wanted to spend. Because for me, when it comes to budgeting, the cost of the nursery is not separate from the cost of a newborn. So the budgets are intertwined. All of the baby things that are needed for the first couple months: car seat, stroller, bassinet, breast pump, bottles, alongside all of the design features and components of a nursery. And that helped me to really understand what my budget threshold was and what my comfort was with spending. And later on down the road, helped me to pick those items that work within a certain price point over falling in love with stuff that I couldn't afford. It also spurred me to take action 2 months ago and start purging and selling things off. I went through everything in the house and made piles, things to chuck, things to donate, things to sell. We sold a bunch of items that were no longer needed through Facebook Marketplace, hosting a garage sale, and posting my more designer clothes, purses, and shoes on Poshmark. I mean, just look at these items. Absolutely stunning shoes and dresses that I still drool over, but the reality is that I haven't worn them for over 5 years and not likely to start now. And through this, we were able to earn around $1,000, which might not seem like a lot, but it's $1,000 we didn't have before. I really encourage you to take a sweep through your own house and find items that could be sold to help pay for baby's arrival. You may not earn a boat ton, but at the very least, you'll get rid of a bunch of clutter to make room for all of the baby stuff. The second step is really sitting in the room and understanding its relationships and how light and heat affect the space. For a few minutes, every few hours within a day, I would come into the room, pay attention to how I entered and the path of natural travel, how bright the space was, and where and how the sun crested, and how hot the room became throughout the day. I really sat and analyzed the room, what was working, what was not working, and how the room worked with the rest of the house. This helped me to create my priority list, the top items that need to be addressed in this nursery space. And what did I learn? This room gets hot, like really hot. I live in the Okanagan in BC, basically the Napa Valley of Canada. And even with central air conditioning, the room does not get properly cool because the heat intake from the window. I was dying in that room. It would cook a baby. That alone really helped me to shape my focus of where I wanted to spend more money. So my top priorities for this room became cutting the heat and light from this window, figuring out how to distribute the airflow from the one vent better and throughout the whole room, coming up with better storage and organizational solution for the closet area, and paying attention to sound intake as the living room is below. Why is this an important step and shouldn't be missed by anyone? If I had gone right into designing my nursery and purchasing items without fully figuring out what I was trying to do in the space and why, I probably would have purchased a boat ton of wallpaper, all the materials to do wainscoting, which was my original design tent, and never really thought about window coverings whatsoever, except for maybe some patterned curtains later on down the road. I would have wasted a whole bunch of money on items that are nice and aesthetically pleasing and end up with a nursery that was stunning. But once the baby arrives, I would have been constantly worried about him overheating and then trying to come up with solutions to cool down the room after the fact and spending more money in the long run. So it is a step I really encourage you to do and not to miss. I'm curious to know if this is something you do as well, or if this is the first time you've ever heard about this process. Comment below. The next step I took in planning out my nursery is layout and flow. So for me, all the time I spent coming in and out of that room when I was analyzing really helped me to understand the room's relationships. So this step was actually really fast. I come in through the door, and in my room, the door is tucked over to the side. So I don't need to worry about it crashing into any objects, impeding egress, or really just getting in the way. It also means that I naturally move over to the left to get into the space. So I am in my room and I have my large sliding door directly in front of me and my closet over to the right. And now I start thinking about the main components of a nursery: crib, changing area, nursing station with supplies, and storage. There are other components that can be added into a nursery space, but those can be figured out later on down the road once the main components are really solidified. And And we start with the crib. Now, I know for a fact that cribs cannot and should not be in front of my windows, primarily from a draft perspective because babies can catch a chill. But in my particular situation, this is a sliding door, so putting a crib in front of this space really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So that leaves the left wall and the right wall. Left wall is closest to the door and entry, right wall is closest to the closet area. And this is where two key components come into play: the crib location and the changing area. Does it make more sense for the changing station to be located along this right wall with close proximity to the closet area, which will house most likely additional clothes and supplies and storage for those things? Or does it make more sense for it to be located further away? And also from a crib perspective, the location of the crib is really important to understand, because when they get older, when you're coming into a room and you're checking on your baby, this direction where it's on the right-hand wall is within direct eyesight and eye line of the baby in a crib. And when babies are a bit older, most of the time they're super happy and content, might be awake, but to just hang out and chill out in that crib area, undisturbed, happy as clams. But as soon as they can see you, they're gonna start crying. So within a position with direct eye line and direct eyesight from the door, if I come in and pop in to check on him, he's gonna see me, start crying, I'm gonna have to pick him up. Where if we're on the left-hand wall and the crib is located here, I have the potential where I can peek in, check on him, he might not see me, he can continue to sleep, and I can sneak away. Logically, with my room's configuration, it makes the most sense for the crib to be located on this left wall and the changing area to be located on this right wall. If I were in a situation where this room was positioned differently and access points were different and closet location was different, and push came to shove, the changing area and the crib were best suited along one wall, I would pick the crib's location and its proximity in terms of being able to peek in to check on my child versus the changing area's proximity and have the changing area further away from the closet. That leaves the nursing station with supplies and a bookshelf for books and soft toys and such. Now, in my particular room's configuration, I have this sliding door which has access over to the left. So I do need to be conscious that at some point, if I want to open up this window, I'm going to need access to this left-hand side. Also, the only air vent within my entire room is located right here. Not super convenient. So I need to be aware of that when I'm placing anything in this corner, because I don't want it to cover the air vent from an airflow perspective, and I need to maintain access to that sliding door. But your glider or nursing chair is ideally within very close proximity to your crib so that you can just easily get up and place the baby into the crib without too many steps to avoid him potentially waking up. So at this point, I'm mentally walking through where it makes the most sense for the glider as well as the bookshelf for stuffies and books to be located within these two corners. Does it make more sense for the glider, which its ideal position is really to be in this corner so it's closest to the crib, but then that would mean that it would block the air vent and impede access to the sliding door for natural airflow? Or do I put it further away from the crib into this corner? And alternatively, from a bookshelf perspective, does it make more sense for that to be in this corner, which would allow airflow to come through the bottom, but it's also a piece of furniture that once he gets a little bit older, he can use to kind of pull himself out and to climb out of his crib? At the end of the day, I made the layout decision that it makes the most sense for my priority list that the glider be located here on the right-hand wall. This allows my air vents to be left free for proper airflow as well as access to my sliding door. And the bookshelf that's going to be over here on the right-hand side is going to be positioned far enough away from the crib that it's not going to be able to be used to climb out. This may change as we actually start setting up the nursery space, but for now, this is the best decision. And once all of this is figured out is when I start to actually get designing. Before I move into image hunting, I first take dimensions of all the space. And I mean all the dimensions. I sketch it out on graph paper first, the rough layout, the dimensions of each wall and components like trim and windows, the overall room dimensions, ceiling height and floor vent location, and vertical elevations to show height of the window and height of location of electrical outlets and switches. I then take this information and I plug it into Chief Architect, my designer computer software. It is expensive and I don't recommend it for personal use. If you're looking for a computer program, I recommend Homestyler or Floor Planner. Both are free and will allow you to draw up your space and figure out relationships with items with their free furniture blocks. Once the floor plan is figured out, I move into Pinterest and start pulling inspiration images for design intent, color direction and options, window coverings, and lighting thought process. Here's where a few things start to happen in tandem. The design intent through inspiration images, sourcing actual projects that fit within the desired design direction, layout manipulation in my computer program to make sure the products I like are actually gonna fit, and budget integration, so I don't fall in love with any product or design direction that pushed my overall budget higher than I'm willing to spend. And at the end of it all, I end up with a design package that looks like this. This design package keeps me on target as I move through the execution phase and gives me a detailed tool that visually shows me what mood and overall look I'm trying to create in the room, so when decisions come up throughout the build out, I know what to do. I'm gonna go get to work on this nursery now, but make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like this type of content, share my video with anyone who's designing and building their dream homes, and of course, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Be sure to watch this video next for part 2 of my nursery reveal, where I'm going to walk you through the design decision process in more detail and give you the nursery sneak peeks along the way. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.